All right, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your day-to-day to join us. I'm Chris Isbell with Martin & Associates, and joining me today is Tom Ferris as well. And we're real excited. You guys are here for our Acumatica Lunch and Learn, focusing on distribution. And before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you in the next few days, so look forward to that. Please use the Zoom chat or Q&A feature to ask any questions, and we'll answer those potentially during the presentation and especially after. And as I said, we are lucky to have with us today Tom Ferris from Martin & Associates. He's our Acumatica practice lead. So we'll jump right in. So Tom, if you don't mind moving that slide a little bit. So today we'll be briefly introducing Martin & Associates and Acumatica, the company and the software. And we'll try and minimize that so we can focus on the demonstration. And then afterwards, we'll answer any questions you guys might have. All right, so briefly about Martin & Associates. So we're an Acumatica partner founded in 1988. So we've been doing this for over 30 years. And in our Cincinnati office, we have a wonderful mix of CPAs and accountants, business process analysts such as myself and Tom, technicians, programmers, developers who can customize the software, get kind of down into the nitty-gritty and add features that it may not have. We also have hardware, desktop, server expertise, a good group that does that. So for our ERP and accounting software, we focus on Acumatica, Sage, and Microsoft Dynamics GP. For CRM, we focus on Creatio. And then we do have a good mix of supplementary solutions for, business intelligence or financial reporting or warehouse management, e-commerce, all that kind of fun stuff. So a lot of experience there as well. We have done, hundreds of ERP implementations, fair amount of CRM implementations, integrating the two, lots of third parties. And as far as our engagement team and methodology, we like to have a good team approach and work with you, the client, based on, your expertise and your abilities. Make sure that we, follow a good implementation methodology that covers, setting up the system, making sure the settings are right, making sure the data is in there correctly if we're converting, training you guys, the customer, on how to use the software, walking through the use cases, make sure we get that right, before we're ready to go live. After we go live, we continue to support, enhance, tweak, train people. We want to be your, your partner for the life of that implementation. So enough about us. I'm going to hand it over to Tom, and he will continue the show.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. Appreciate it. So getting to know, again, this is Tom Ferris with Martin Associates. We're going to spend a little bit more time here in PowerPoint introducing our audience to Acumatica, the publisher, who sells their product exclusively through value-added resellers like us at Martin Associates, VARs, partners with Acumatica. All right, so a couple slides. Since this recording will be sent to you afterwards, I won't spend too much time on these slides. But the idea is to drive home that if you haven't heard of Acumatica, customers, the industry who extends ERPs with vertical extensions, and the network of entities that are responsible for reviewing software, like G2 Crowd, are paying attention and have been for quite some time. And Acumatica is a leader in customer satisfaction, for example. And another version, I guess, from a different reviewer of customer satisfaction called user sentiment. Acumatica is placed very high amidst its mid-market ERP competitors like Microsoft or NetSuite, Infor, Oracle, etc. So there's that little bit of visibility. IDC, another industry reviewer, placing Acumatica in usability and other rankings as far as how easy is it to use, what's the breadth of functionality, and what's the combination of those two, and how does Acumatica perform? Here's Nuclear Research's equivalent. All right, moving on. Acumatica is was born in the cloud. It's a cloud ERP that can be accessed from any device anywhere. So it's browser agnostic. You can be running different operating systems, Windows, Android, Linux, and access the software from your mobile device, whether that be Android or iOS, your tablet running Google Chrome, or your laptop running Firefox browser. Okay. A brief review of Acumatica's Bill of Rights, which is available on their website. A couple highlights. Mention that local business expertise here. Point number 9 is really about Acumatica's alignment with value-added resellers like Martin and Associates, who leveraging our local presence, if applicable, our business expertise in the areas that we focus, including obviously distribution, which is our focus today, as well as the fact that, to Chris's point, Martin Associates would be the first layer of support for you and your team, whether it's ongoing training, troubleshooting, upgrading to the next version once you're live, or expanding your use of Acumatica. The publisher Accumatica relies on partners like Martin Associates as the first level of support, first layer of support. Another highlight would be that Accumatica, though in the cloud, it's based on a SQL database, and you as a customer can obtain a full copy of a SQL backup, so of the entire relational database at any point in time. All right, moving on. You can read about that, and Martin Associates, of course, would be happy to field any questions about any of this content, this introduction. Acumatica is built around a growth-friendly licensing model that ideally invites all employees, not just power users or occasional users. In fact, it doesn't actually have differentiation. You are a user in Acumatica, whether you're consuming dashboards, financial reports, or you are busy as an AP clerk. The idea is to get everyone into the platform and turn everyone ideally into an analyst for your business, because there's no barrier to logging into Acumatica based on, like, say, user headcounts. Acumatica is capable of being deployed where you want it to go, and can actually be moved back and forth between the public cloud. So public cloud is really Acumatica partnering with Amazon Web Services, AWS. That's the full SaaS offering, software as a service. But the exact same feature set can be deployed not with Amazon Web Services, and instead in a server environment that you've set up behind your firewall, or with a third-party hosting service. And again, your database can move back and forth between those two without any interruption or loss of feature set, depending on your needs. This brief slide here is really about the independent software vendor ecosystem that supports and extends Acumatica. So these are all the third parties. Acumatica doesn't try to be a credit card processor or a tax calculation engine. they partner with and have integrations to, say, Velixo and Avalara for tax calculations. So it's leveraging best practices. There's DocuSign. The idea is that Acumatica has been in the marketplace for over 12 years now, and these best of breed extensions have caught on and made sure that they integrate with or extend Acumatica. This is really about the publisher and their active participation in continue to upgrade and release their software. Acumatica releases 2 major builds per year. And as a best practice, ideally, to keep up with all the new features and enhancements that Acumatica is constantly building into their product, upgrading approximately once a year is a good mix for most of our customers. Okay. The publisher, Acumatica, also provides a fantastic set of free training materials online. Whether you're a prospect, just kind of dipping your toe in the water, or you are a live customer who has ongoing training needs for your staff, in addition to Martin Associates being available for all sorts of training opportunities, the publisher provides a great set of content on Acumatica Open University. You can Google it and log in and see the content that's there. Very comprehensive, everything from IT to finance to reporting to primary business functions like sales orders, inventory management. All that training content's available online. Today we are focusing on the distribution edition, but this slide is really here just to remind us all of the continuity of the distribution edition. Possesses all the functions of the general business edition as far as the core financial features: GL, AP, AR, cash banking, rec. And then building upon those is the distribution feature set that we're going to review today. And that you might be on this call or listening to it, and while you have significant inventory management needs, and of course you have purchase orders and sales orders, you also might be a manufacturer or have a significant retail or e-commerce presence, and that the distribution edition forms the core for boarding inventory, costing inventory, counting it, informing an e-commerce platform upstream of the available quantity that could be sold, and then also helps manage for, say, manufacturing needs, the supply chain of raw materials and sub-assemblies that you build before producing and shipping out a finished good. Okay. All right, so today we're going to be focusing on the distribution edition feature set. Of course, it does come with an advanced financial core. We're not going to really focus much on the backbone of integrated financials. Instead, we're going to look at some of the fantastic features associated with managing sales, fulfillment, warehouse management, pricing and discount management, as well as requests, requisitions, and purchase order for the inbound supply chain. And this is a quick laundry list of some of the features. We will look at some of these today, but you'll have this recording for if we, and of course, we would be happy to follow up. If today we didn't spend as much time on lot and serial tracking throughout the life cycle of inventory, then let us know. Martin Associates would be happy to follow up. All right, so there's a little graphical image of the distribution edition that we are going to take a brief look at warehouse management, procurement, so purchasing, shipping goods out, core inventory management. In fact, it's all integrated with the financial core and supports, of course, e-commerce. Here's a brief introduction to if you visit Accumatica's website or look up this particular customer who took the time to let us know how well the distribution core is functioning and accelerating their business once they left QuickBooks Enterprise edition, check out Bluefin Collectibles. All right, we are on to the demonstration. So that means I'm exiting PowerPoint. We are looking at Acumatica. Let me just refresh that in the background. All right, so we're going to begin with a brief navigational introduction to Acumatica as a user interface, and then we'll dive into some features associated with the distribution edition. All right. For starters, I've chosen to log in and pick the Warehouse Manager dashboard as my landing page. So as soon as I log into Acumatica, and if I'm visiting something else, if I just click on the logo up here, upper left, I'm brought to my dashboard. Important to understand that a dashboard in Acumatica is a real-time object. There is no data warehouse with Acumatica. So this is a little bit of database architecture, but there's a SQL backend behind this pretty cloud interface or browser-based interface. But I don't have to wait for an overnight data warehouse refresh intermediary to get updated information. So if I click on this orders to ship scorecard KPI that says there's 6 orders to ship today, I'm brought to the underlying list of sales orders that are ready to be shipped. And I could click into a given sales order and maybe investigate why is it open and eligible to be shipped, and why haven't the items shipped. And of course, I can click on each item and see kind of a ticker tape of quantity on hand per item and what's eligible to ship, and see if there's any impediments, what quantity has shipped. The idea behind the dashboard is if someone resolves that particular sales order that we just took a quick peek at, and I refresh my browser, or I click in to the orders to ship list again, that sales order would be gone, it'd be removed, right? It's instantaneous. In other words, the reports, the lists, the dashboards, the bar charts like this, they are all in real time. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to my landing page here. I'm going to move highlight some of the kind of core navigation features of Acumatica. In the universal search field up here where it says search, I'm going to type in 1099 as an example string. And this universal search, which is basically like Google for your Acumatica, your ERP, will give you 4 chapters of return. First will be, are you looking for a menu item in Acumatica, like the 1099 NEC form? Or are you looking for some help or a particular form like the 1099 year summary form? The next chapter of return is really about locating a particular record. So were you looking for an AP bill, or a project record, or a vendor record, or maybe even an AP check by typing in 1099? Next chapter of return would be, are you looking for assistance with filling out the 1099 MISC form, or maybe even filing it with the tax agency, or sending out the printed form to your suppliers or contractors? Right, so the help topics it's basically the same information that's available in this contextual help that we'll see. I'll probably click on that a couple times on certain forms so we can see the breadth of help that's available. The last chapter of return in our universal search would be, are you looking for a particular file attachment? So maybe I had a vendor invoice, which I'm going to treat as an AP bill liability, that was emailed to me, and Acumatica scanned it into accounts payable, and I'm looking for that attachment name. So attachments, PDFs, in this case PNGs, will be indexed by Acumatica and attached to the records. All right, so that's universal help. Next kind of navigational assistant is recently visited records. That's what this little icon represents, and it shows me the sales orders and purchase orders, inventory items, maybe even administrative user activity that I've done on a per user basis. So that's that. Acumatica supports the ability to have multiple companies, branches, business units, sales territories differentiated. They might all share the same chart of accounts and the same financial reporting core, but if we want to report out or allow folks to only log into and interact with a certain division or segment of our business, however we define that, whether that's a unique EIN or simply a sales territory that we've defined, Acumatica will support multiple business entities, whether they do arm's length transactions with one another or not, all to be present in one database. And there's no change in the software cost based on the quantity, the number of businesses you have. You can add basically an unlimited number of branches or divisions to this list. All right, that's a good quick tour of like some of the top bar controls of Acumatica. I want to draw our attention now to the workspaces here on the left. These are the modules or workspaces of Acumatica. And if I click on sales orders, for example, we're going to spend some time today looking at sales orders. We might spend a bit of time looking at shipments and some of the variations of a pick list going outbound. This list of features in sales orders, what appears here in this kind of short list versus the show all list, you can see there's a lot of features in there. Each user has a chance to control what they consider to be most relevant. So if they're not spending much time on quotes or blanket sales orders or modifying the print forms, but instead are regularly invoking certain these two variations of the pick list, you can control that. And then that controls a show all versus show less version of what's in that workspace. This is all going to be based on the user permissions that each user has. If they don't have access per security to sales orders or managing a sales price list, they wouldn't actually be able to see that module or that feature. The next bit of like navigational cue would be the ability to put this little star out to the left and highlight this little star out to the left. And that adds to a favorites menu that is workspace or category specific. So my list of favorites here in the upper left, I'm seeing under sales orders themselves, invoices, shipments, and the pick list that has barcodes on it. And then similarly, in inventory, I've got some scan and count activity or stock item master, and a couple other features. Lastly, as far as like navigational cues, I'll highlight the more items button, which per my security permissions allows me to see what other workspaces could I add to my left navigation. If we wanted to look at the chart of accounts, or I monitor balance sheet and P&L, I would come here and toggle this push pin sideways and add the finance workspace to my left navigation, and maybe balance sheet, profit and loss, and the cash flow statement are new favorites that I'll add for managing finance. Okay, just about done with some navigational cues. Last thing I'll do is take us to managing lots of transactions. So let's go to purchase orders. And here, let's take that off. Okay, so I've stepped over to the purchase order, the purchases workspace, and picked up the list of purchase orders. Now there's 1,600 or so purchase orders in the system. And throughout Acumatica, users have the ability to decide what elements that are on screen matter most to them, and in fact, what order they're actually displayed in. So if I'm managing certain vendors, I might choose to have the vendor ID, and vendor name be the first two columns displayed for me. I'm not too concerned about the type, perhaps, and I can even make that column smaller. So that's one way to kind of discern which elements are the most important to you. There's a number of hidden fields that aren't revealed, just to kind of help keep the list cleaner. But if I want to keep track of who the approver is and which branch of the business these purchase orders are coming in from, I can add those fields, and then even advance the sequence with which I see those columns. So it's another way to take the approver and the branch field or columns on the purchase order and have them show up kind of earlier. Maybe things that are less important for me, I'll allow to scroll out and view those. Okay, each one of these columns also allows for filtering, right? So the status column, I click on the status column, and what do I really want to see? So clear off. I want to pay attention to items that are on, purchase orders are on hold, pending approval, maybe have even been rejected by the approval process, and are pending printing or emailed, or being emailed to vendors or suppliers. I can kind of quickly view that subset of 3 records. Another way to handle this, select all, is the fact that right here in Acumatica, if I have reporting needs that are pivot table based, and I want to break down these 1600 records, come here to this little ellipsis, hit save as pivot, and maybe I'm going to pivot on status and type. We'll share that configuration with others. And if you're familiar with pivot tables in Microsoft Excel. All right, so status and type. So I'm looking for the status field to be the rows, and the order type, the purchase order type, to be the columns. And I really want just a tally of those purchase orders. Okay, gotcha. So now, of the 1600 records, I can see kind of a breakdown of them by type. I do have one open blanket purchase order. I've got 125 drop ship purchase orders that have been completed. And then my non-drop ship and non-blanket sales orders, or normal, purchase orders. If I wanted to take a look at the 6 that are open, or the 2 that are pending approval, I can just click on this hyperlink. So not only do I have a pivot table, but it's an active pivot table right here in Acumatica. And I can drill into the American refrigeration PO that's sitting here pending approval. All right, so that was a quick kind of navigational rundown. Now we're going to pivot to focusing on a number of distribution highlights in Acumatica. And we'll start with this purchase order since we're here. Our purchase order is capable of optionally going through an approval process per the status. So if I come here to the approvals tab of the purchase order, someone else put this information in, and it is a supervisor by the name of Layla, who actually from the finance group, who's expected to approve it before this purchase order is eligible really for being printed, sent to the supplier, let alone having those items or services receipted or consumed. The approval map, you can actually have proxy approvers take care of approving if Layla's on vacation. I'm logged in as an administrator by the name of Maxwell Baker. I can actually hit approve on the purchase order, and you can see that though it was assigned to Layla, it was Maxwell Baker who actually provided the approval on this date. This is an optional feature. You can see this throughout Acumatica: sales orders, AP bills, AP check runs, etc. Lots of records throughout Acumatica are eligible for an optional approval map. Okay. I'm also highlight the ability for Acumatica to reveal incremental help content. So if I hover for a few seconds on a given field, Acumatica will give you a little indicator about what that field is about or potentially used for. the same information is available on a contextual basis. If I'm on the purchase orders form and I have additional questions about it, I come in here and hit this question mark and look up some help content on purchasing items that are added as assets to basically via a stock item versus maybe I want to learn about blanket and standard purchase orders versus the normal purchase order function. I'll come down here, for example, and hit the form reference to kind of give us a visual. So I got the purchase orders tab on the left, and from it, I invoke the help menu for purchase orders. And this will break down each section of the purchase order form and talk about each field and what its ideal purpose is, and help answer a lot of questions. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to the purchase order. We'll come back to this. I wanted to make sure we focused on inventory. So let's do this. I'll hit the Acumatica logo, and it brings me back to my kind of home page for Warehouse Manager. And I'm going to focus on a particular stock item. So let's do this. Let's take a look in the inventory. We'll talk about some of the available features here. Right now, I want to take us right to the inventory core, the stock item master. So because it's a browser, I'll come in here and right click and open up in a new tab the stock item list. And I'm looking for a particular item. This is the Keurig model 450 that's in this demonstration data. And here's our stock item master. There's a lot going on this screen. We're going to move across these tabs and get a feel for all that the inventory feature set can do in just a few minutes. All right, so we begin with the fact that throughout Acumatica, a master record, like a stock item, similarly a customer or a vendor record are going to be managed by a required class. And right off the bat, deciding that this Keurig model 450, this fancy coffee maker, if I'm a manufacturer, for example, using this inventory distribution core as the basis for managing inventory, whether it's finished good or raw materials, I come here to the item class, and the item class is helping inform a whole bunch of information, making data entry of a new SKU easy and yet accurate. That I've kind of predefined the item type. I have predefined the valuation method for the inventory asset, standard cost, average cost, FIFO, or specific lot treatment or serial treatment. Tax category has been defined. How I will transact with the item as far as postings to the GL, that's all been defined. Whether or not this class of items is tracked by lot and serial. So here's a very quick preview of all the ways, or some of the ways, that Acumatica can track either lot or serial. That lot or serial could be issued as soon as the item is onboarded. Maybe we don't serialize a finished good until it's manufactured and ready to be shipped out. That can be a very different setting. And then when an item is heading out the door, either to be pulled onto a production order or shipped to a customer, how is a given lot or serial consumed down? Is it based on expiration date for food items or plastics that degrade over time? Or are we going to do first in, first out? Or is it more unique with custom orders, and then we want to have a user enterable? In other words, the user who's actually putting together the pick, pack, and ship process knows exactly which item to pull. Or are we simply just marching through a sequence and grabbing from inventory and having software help queue up for the user that which should be picked up next? All right, so that's a lot serial preview. Acumatica allows for multiple warehouses. We'll see that through another view. Our Item class also help define availability. So this is really soft versus hard allocations. So on a class basis, if you want to, you could have just one availability calculation, but you could have different availability calculations in different warehouses where we're either pessimistic about the availability of items based on allocations like a sales order is even in draft state and is consuming potential inventory from being sent out, or optimistic. How optimistic are we about inbound quantities that are on purchase orders that are partially receipted, or even returns that are inbound? Okay, so quantity on hand is just the start of the availability equation. The question is, what's been allocated of that inventory and why? Okay. Now there's a number of other settings as far as like under and overship thresholds that are allowed for the pick, pack, and ship process. Unit of measure conversion. Briefly, replenishment is capable of being determined on a per warehouse basis, and you can actually have multiple determinants for replenishment for an item. That by default, we replenish a given finished good through a manufacturing process. But when we're in a pinch, we can pivot to purchasing from a supplier. Might be a higher cost, might impact our margin, but Acumatica will support multiple replenishment models. We're talking about safety stock, reorder point, as well as optimization points for including mins and maxes. Lastly, our item class is capable of managing unique attributes or custom fields, aka UDFs, user-defined fields, that extend Acumatica stock item master to contain details that aren't naturally part of the software. All right, so that took us, the item class took us through a lot of the features of the stock item master. From a warehouse perspective, I'll use the warehouses tab for that example. I did want to point out that Acumatica supports a full physical inventory process, including cycle counts as defined by your business needs. So certain SKUs, entire classes, entire warehouses can be subject to differentiated physical inventory cycle counting. The entire warehouse versus just these high velocity items, and the ABC code feature can help manage that as well. All right, so moving across the tabs here. While we can record a default price, and let's see, this item is average cost. So the average cost is going to build across transactions, and yet the last cost that was encountered based on receiving this item into inventory will be displayed independent of the kind of running average. And we'll also see the extremes of min and max cost that the software experienced that contribute to that average. So this allows for, if you need to tune a purchase order to the letest from a given supplier, for example, you can manually overwrite that, but that's only one option. Let's do this. We go into payables and add that workspace. Under the payables workspace, we can manage entire vendor price worksheets, where we actually manage the expected purchase price per our supplier's information. So this one is released. This actually goes through a release process. So that's what this remove from hold is really about. But uploading straight from Excel a given vendor's indication for a given item at a particular unit of measure that you will receipt into a given warehouse. There may or may not be a break quantity, but this allows you to take a given price and supersede it as of a given effective date with what the new pending price will be. And then that's what will be applied the next time your supply folks put in a new purchase order. All right, so we got vendor price worksheet management. We'll see the equivalent in customer-based pricing when we take a look at sales orders in a minute or two. All right, back to our stock item master. Navigate back there. Let's take a quick run through of some of the remaining tabs. We talked about price management, multiple warehouses. So if we want to record quantity on hand and price or even landed cost differentiation, we can have the same stock item master reflected in multiple warehouses. So maybe we got a retail warehouse that we decide it has one, it has very different locations in the warehouse. Two, we might actually on our books have that inventory asset stored in a different inventory account based on warehouse if we want to. Replenishment wise, this retail warehouse may not be responsible for purchase orders directly coming into it. Instead, we replenish the quantity we expect to have on hand in that retail through transfers, right? So that we're expected to transfer the goods from a given destination warehouse, maybe our primary warehouse. And then lastly, a quick review of the fact that on a per warehouse basis, the same SKU can have differentiated average cost and expected last cost managed. All right. Let's see. Next up for our stock item master, let's hit back on our browser. We took a look at warehouses. Can have multiple vendors, multiple suppliers, where one is denoted as the default. So this would be us selecting a particular supplier that we get that item from, and what's their general lead time. So lead time, the vendor might have a basis lead time, but in general, it takes a solid 20 days on average. That will impact the expected date of a purchase order. So that if I have either manual processes of putting together a purchase order, or I use the replenishment settings to automatically generate purchase orders, this will contribute to an accurate expectation about when I should expect that inventory to be available to me. Okay. If the vendor refers to that item by a different ID, put that information here. Talked about attributes. I'll skip through some of the packaging treatment that's available. I wanted to take a quick peek at the fact that our cross-reference tab on the stock item master allows for receiving in goods easily from a given supplier. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's set it to a different vendor part number for that vendor. If this vendor refers to that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can set up a barcode for each unit of measure so that on receipt, the barcode that the supplier has on a pallet of eaches or dozens or some other quantity can actually be scanned right by the WMS in Acumatica and recognize and kind of quickly onboard based on the unit measure that it was sent to me under. That's going to basically pertain to, in general, I purchased this item at something other than eaches. I maybe purchased this at a different unit of measure, such as a box of 10, for example. All right. Moving on. So that's our kind of cross-reference. And we talked about replenishment. Yeah, that's the extent of a quick tour of the stock item master and some of its capabilities. I want to move next to, we talked about warehouses. Yep. I want to talk about some of the WMS features. So our automated operations under inventory means that the barcodes we see eligible to be produced on pick, pack, and ship, or on a physical inventory count sheet can be barcoded. So too can a purchase receipt can be barcoded. And that means that right here, without a specific WMS software or extension to Acumatica, natively the automated operations forms can be pulled up, and I can run a physical count. I could transfer items from warehouse to warehouse. I can receive goods right from a mobile device that's connected and logged into Acumatica directly. This scanning, so the scan and receive page, I could be pulling up the equivalent of this on the right here on the desktop and using a wedge scanner. So basically a handheld scanner that's tethered right into my laptop or workstation or desktop. You could also be running the Acumatica mobile app and have the barcodes on a piece of paper reacted to with an iPhone or Android doing the scanning and counting, or you could actually go with an actual full WMS handheld, from Zebra or Motorola. No additional software is required. Acumatica would allow that device to log into it directly and impact inventory directly in Acumatica. All right, so that's a very quick rundown of WMS capacity within Acumatica, impacting both pick, pack, and ship, as well as receiving and physical inventory, directed put away. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to transition to purchasing really briefly before looking at a sales order features. All right, in purchasing, we took a quick peek at purchase orders, and we can take a look at the relationship between purchase orders and purchase receipts. But I want to highlight a feature or two that's upstream from a purchase order. The ability for users across your organization to put in a purchase request. This is a preview to an open requisition for that item from a potential supplier. This is basically a precursor to a purchase order. So if you want to allow, this is optional, if you want to allow staff to put in requests for a certain item. So here's an internal request from a given user who is requesting a new laptop for their department. And in putting together a request, we can have either stock items or non-stock items like services, legal services, office supplies that you don't stock, can all be part of the request. And the request can be tied to a natural account and maybe even a sub account that defines the division or product line that's being impacted. And the purchase request can go through an approval, much like we saw in a purchase order. And just as important is the requester themselves can see how their potential purchase order request impacts the budget. So if you have a budget ledger that's been loaded into Acumatica, this request can be compared to that budget. The purchase requests can go through their approval process, and once and if approved, then they can go through a formal or informal requisition process where a vendor or a supplier is identified. You can even manage bids there, and then finally create a purchase order. So on the purchase order feature set, receiving in goods can be a one-to-one activity, and that the entire contents of a given purchase order, let's just pick on one that's significant. All right, so here's a purchase order that may or may have not gone through approval. Again, that's an optional feature. The PO history tab will give you a running tally of the receipt or receipts plural that it took to bring in all of the content. Acumatica supports vendor returns of damaged goods or goods that once inspected need to be sent back. That'll be all recorded right on the purchase order. That's which was receipted versus what was returned. And the net results can be reflected in an AP bill that's linked right to the purchase order. Similarly, so regarding a three-way match, if we click on the hyperlink for that AP bill, we'll see one, we can attach the vendor's invoice here, add any additional, say, freight charges that weren't reflected on our initial PO, and see a hyperlink right back to the purchase order and then the purchase receipt or receipts plural that it took to bring that inventory in. So it's all tied together. All right. Quick rundown of purchasing. We talked about vendor prices already. All right, I think it's time for me to pivot to our final topic, and that's sales. Sales orders. I mentioned vendor prices earlier with the equivalent process for sales price management, as well as discounts. And I think the best way to kind of highlight it is to just pop into a given sales order. Oh, that's right. I had one particular an example. So I'll use my little sales order search feature here. Oops, got some extra characters I don't need. There we go. All right, so highlighting a particular sales order, a little bit like the inventory master, let's talk about some of the capacity. First thing I see here is the customer in red, and a little warning here that the customer's credit limit has been exceeded. So, here's the relationship between the accounts receivable module that houses the customer record and the sales order feature set. So if we click on the pencil here, we can drill down right into the customer record. Again, this would be, if I'm a salesperson, I may or may not have permission to come into the customer master. That's going to depend on security. But Acumatica is indicating which tab, because there's a lot going on here. What are their payment methods? Are there multiple locations for this customer? What are their shipping settings, etc.? My eye is being drawn to the financial tab that tells me this is a customer or entire class of customers where both their dollar amount limit and the days past due are both monitored for compliance. And it looks like we've got probably both credit limit and days past due challenges to resolve. And then from a security perspective, maybe I can resolve those. Maybe I need to halt. You can actually decide whether or not a credit hold is what should kick in, and that your sales team, unbeknownst to them, really shouldn't actually be sending any items or booking any new sales orders until we resolve their balance. Okay, so that's a quick tie between accounts receivable and sales order processing. Let's come down and look at some of the features of the sales order. So right off the bat, highlighting a given stock item master, there's a hyperlink back to the stock item master. I see a ticker tape here at the bottom that's letting me know about quantity on hand, and of the quantity on hand per our allocation discussion earlier, how much of it's actually available to be allocated to this order, let alone available to actually ship out today, for example. Up at the top, if we look at this ellipsis here, little three dots out to the right, are all the available processing, approval, printing, replenishment, and other actions I could be taking on the sales order. And we see that both the quick process action button, as well as the invitation to create a shipment record for some or all these goods are highlighted. But if I wanted to have like the cancel order button at my disposal, because that's something that I end up having to do, unfortunately, every once in a while, I can promote that button or action or report for that matter. So if I have got a particular, the printing of the sales order is a button I want to have, and maybe I don't want that cancel order as a favorite. So each user has a chance to decide what are the actions or workflows that I follow, and which things do I want to have kind of promoted and made easier for me. So there's the printing of the sales order, and the resulting form will be pulled up into a separate tab. If that's something I want to print out as a physical piece of paper at like a point of sale or desk, or maybe I'm emailing the sales order to the customer so that they can kind of confirm it before I finish processing it. And if you have got the right, if you've put in on the customer record, or even on the sales order, if it's unique, who this should be sent to. What we're doing here is really invoking a template, kind of like a Microsoft Word mail merge template that'll kind of pre-populate the subject, the body, and we'll prepare an image of that form to be sent to the customer. All right, this ticker tape right here, if I take a quick preview of each of the 4 items, okay, that one's available for shipping, 500. This one's available for shipping, 578, and that's available. That gives me a kind of a quick preview that all of these line items are available for shipping, and I'd be able to hit create shipment. More importantly, and more regularly used than like on an order by order basis, are the process forms, in that processing multiple orders simultaneously and preparing an action like the creation of the shipment records so that I can print out the pick, pack, and ship list. Those can be performed en masse, and only inventory that's eligible to be sent will be picked up by this process. Let's see, Chris, I have gone through quite a bit of distribution feature set in Acumatica, and we are nearing time. So I can show a few more hours worth of features in Acumatica, but I have to yield the floor.
Yes, no, that was very thorough. Thank you, Tom, for that. We do have some questions. I know we're right up against that 1 hour time limit, but quickly, there was one about, if you don't mind just briefly discussing it, lot serial tracking.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Are there specifics, or should I just take a quick peek at the
it was mainly serial numbers and how those can be generated and tracked.
Oh yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. So let's just jump right into the lot serial classes that we looked at briefly earlier, and pick on one of them. So serializing inventory inbound would be this one. So this is an option of a lot serial class that could be applied to one stock item or thousands of stock items based on the class. And it basically says, we'll put a serial item on our inventory as it's receipted in. So I might be an electronics manufacturer, and I get certain parts and I want to track the component serial numbers against the resulting finished good that I actually sell. This would be an example of this serial number. So it's been told to, I don't want to do it based on lot, I want to do it on serial numbers. And I do or do not have an expiration date associated with these items. As soon as the item is received is when the serial number is generated. When it goes out the door, user enterable rather than say like a sequential consumption is this. If it's user enterable, this is probably an item that needs to be uniquely, it's probably a custom item. that's going to be shipped out. So I'm going to serialize it when I bring it in. It'll be serialized when it ships out to a customer. What the actual ID looks like can be up to you. This one has a constant with an S and a pound on it, and then can be told to like auto number from there. I'm wondering if that gives an idea or at least a partial answer to the question, or do you think there's more to the question?
I think we're good.
Okay, gotcha.
All right.
And I know we're at time. Go ahead.
No, we are. I was gonna say, yeah, we are at time. And thanks everybody for attending. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. We'd be happy to go into more detail about anything and discuss, your situation and figure out if Acumatica might be a good fit or what features would work for you. So thank you all. Have a great day.